Now, if you're a new watcher to the WNBA, your introduction to Chennedy Carter is likely as agitator to Caitlin Clark when they first matched up with the Chicago Sky. Now, if you're not very new to basketball on the women's side, you know Chennedy Carter is one of those players that's been a bucket for years, and she's finally getting another shot at the WNBA after some controversial past with her former teams. Now, further than just that incident alone, of course, with it being Caitlin Clark that she shoved down on an away from the ball type of play, of course, the fan base surrounding Caitlin Clark as well, the toxic side at least, they dug up a lot of Chennedy's history and not some of the brighter parts of her history. And it's a shame to say, because Chennedy Carter is a bona fide bucket, has been a bucket, and had some controversial history with her prior teams, but that has never ever gotten in the way of the fact that she is a great basketball player. In the making of this video, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I understood why Chennedy Carter said outside of three-point shooting, Caitlin Clark does what. Not to say that she had any validity to it, because of course Caitlin Clark does more than just shoot threes, but after seeing how good of a player Chennedy is herself, I then understood why she said what she said and the kind of point of view that she took. Because I'll be honest with you guys, at first I was like, I remember this name, don't quite remember her completely, but let me look into her because she's talking like she one of them and I just don't know. And then when I looked her up and I saw her in that college jersey, it jogged a few memories. Now, most recently, as of the recording of this video, she is coming off a monstrous 33-point game against the Storm, where she played just 36 minutes and shot 62% from the field. This is not a fluke either, with 4 of her last 5 games seeing her hit the 20-point mark while shooting over 60% in 3 of those games. We see where Chennedy is today, but after a simple Google search and seeing she was drafted in the 2020 WNBA draft with the 4th overall pick, you begin to question, why is she just not bursting onto the scene? Anyone that has been watching understands that Chennedy has revived her career, but what has she revived it from? What is the cause of this revival, and how far has she come from whatever happened in her past? Now, I will dive into all that and more, but before we get into the video, do me a favor, drop a comment right now on who your favorite player in the WNBA this year has been thus far. I will do a video on them. I want to kind of expose more people to the WNBA. I feel like if you're more personable with a player, you understand a player, and you kind of understand where a player comes from, you start to be a little bit more of a fan. We start to see more player fans as opposed to team fans now. So I think that'll really help with regard to the WNBA landscape, especially because it seems like they have trouble marketing their entire talent as opposed to just stars, which at this point, when you're a smaller league like you are, you're trying to get all the eyes that you can. You got to market everybody. Of course, push your biggest stars, but there should be a better job of getting other names out there as well too. I think a big part of the NBA culture that goes really underrated, under the radar, is those random guys that we can name just off the top of our head for absolutely no reason. Like, I can name Pablo Prigioni, and I'm sure a lot of you guys watching this video knows exactly who that is, and he wasn't really much of anything in the NBA. If we could have people like that in the W, I think that'll go a long way. And Chennedy Carter was one of those players that I felt is very deserving of this, especially being on this 1-year prove-it deal with the Chicago Sky. And might I say, she's meshed very well with this team. Now, I'm sure I'm gonna earn a like from you by the end of this video. If not, hopefully I earn a sub. But either way, if I don't, I appreciate you watching, tuning in, however long you do tune in, and we're about to hop into the video. Chennedy Carter, the only girl with 3 brothers and a product of Fort Worth, Texas from Timberview High School. She led her team to a state runner-up, averaging 24-4 her senior year, on the way to Texas A&M after becoming a McDonald's All-American and Jordan Brand Classic participant in 2017. She finished her last 2 years of high school with a 70-4 record, while also being a member of the Team USA 18 under team. Chennedy immediately exploded on the scene her freshman year, where she set a record 785 points in a season, the second most by any player of any class for her school. She led Division I freshmen in points per game, averaging 22.7 points, and even averaged an insane 31.3 points per game in the NCAA tourney. The NCAA tourney is where I remembered her the most. I knew I heard the name from somewhere, couldn't exactly remember where, but when I looked up those highlights from A&M, I remembered exactly who I was seeing on the screen, because she does not play basketball like your normal woman. She plays like a nigga. I'm not gonna lie to you. And I'm gonna say it right here, right now. You know what the hell I mean. She plays just like that, and she's a bucket just like that. And if you've been watching the Chicago Sky, you know that. Now, her next 2 years saw more of the same, seeing AP All-American honors in 2019 as a salute to her wonderful play. She was solid in college, averaging just above 20 points per game every year in a rock-solid SEC conference that had the powerhouse Mississippi State, South Carolina, and other historic programs like Tennessee, LSU, and a surprise team around this era, UGA. For context, because I know a lot of us don't know who went to those schools during that time, she played the likes of Asia Wilson, Tierra McCowan, and other WNBA talent. She even had 2 WNBA players on her team alone. She wasn't a slouch, and she wasn't playing against slouches either. She was in a very tough conference, and she was showing that she belonged. All 3 years of her college career, she averaged 22 points. Not only did she show she was rock solid, but she showed this is her, it was not a fluke, and she was efficient while doing it. After seeing her play, not only just in the college regular season, but in the NCAA tourney where she elevated every single year, it was clear why she was meant to be a lottery pick or just outside the lottery for the WNBA draft. At this point, going into the WNBA, there was no questions regarding Chennedy Carter and her bucket getting ability as well as her playmaking ability. In 2020, she was looked to be one of the top picks in the WNBA draft lottery. And if you guys don't know, the WNBA draft lottery isn't the first 14 picks like the NBA. They don't even have 14 teams. They only have 12. So the draft lottery for them is the top 4 teams. So if you're a top 4 pick, you're in the lottery. That's a lot different from the NBA, and I think it gives a little bit more meaning to the lottery because it's so many less picks. There's 10 less picks. At this point, we see why she was picked 4th overall by the Atlanta Dream, and after looking deeper into her career before the WNBA, it's clear that Chennedy Carter was ready for the NBA long before she even made it there. Again, as a freshman, she averaged 22 points at Texas A&M. She took the world by storm as a true freshman. She was ready. In her first year with the Atlanta Dream, she averaged 17 points per game over 16 games, missing 11 due to an elbow injury. And in my opinion, had it not been for this injury, I believe Chennedy wins the Rookie of the Year award over Crystal Dangerfield, who averaged 16 points and 9 rebounds across 21 games. So I genuinely believe that this larger body of work is likely what sold the voters, including the fact that, she wasn't even looked to play until injuries led to her starting and becoming her team's leading scorer. So, I don't want to take anything from her at all. I know that's pretty contradictory because that's exactly what I'm doing, but Chennedy did deserve the award had she be able to sustain this over a little bit longer period. Now, moving on to Kennedy's sophomore campaign, this is where we started to see the issues and why she started to, be cast out of the WNBA. It all started with her vet, Courtney Williams, telling her to cheer on a teammate, all the while Chennedy was sitting on the bench, to which Chennedy obviously did not like this, argued back with her, but what made it worse was that not only did she argue, it spilled into the locker room up until the point that Chennedy was ready to catch the fade with her. And obviously, as a vet, Courtney is not catching the fade with you, bro. Not over telling you to cheer for a teammate. It's not happening. It's not worth it. Okay, I lied. Maybe she knew Chennedy wasn't the one to fuck with, but I digress. To Chennedy, it was worth it. Remember, I told you guys she had 3 brothers, and she's the youngest of 3 brothers. So I'm gonna tell you guys now, I'm pretty sure she didn't grow up in a soft household at all, especially if you look at her IG pic. She is a thug. But I digress. Her brothers even admitted to kind of raising her that way. So me saying she's tough, it's not even out of bounds. I'm sure she'll probably tell you that, and she'll probably be happy that they helped her to be tough, because to be a professional athlete, you got to be tough, and toughness coming from boys when you're in a women's league, that's a different kind of toughness. Now, after the vet Courtney Williams refused to fight, the Dream suspended Chennedy, and they later traded her after this to the Sparks for the 2022 WNBA season. Now, in what's already a smaller league with even smaller opportunities, even for a player that's as highly talented as Chennedy was, this is an awful look. You can't be doing this, especially when it comes to you arguing with the vet, when the vet was right. The vet was right in this situation. There's no other way to put it. So it looks horrible on Kennedy's part, and she's quite frankly lucky that the Sparks were willing to take her on in that trade. This is one of those things that if management sees this, they're going to think of you as untouchable, because if you can't listen to your vet, how are you going to listen to your coach? It just doesn't make sense. Now, after this trade, this led to Chennedy playing for the Sparks for 24 games during the 2022 season, which it was almost the same amount of time of games she played in the Dream uniform. However, her minutes were way lower, going from around 16 minutes a game to just under 9 minutes per game. When the LA Times asked the coach during this time what was the reasoning for this, they said it was conduct detrimental to the team. And while we don't know the details quite yet, I'm sure it was largely for the same sort of reasons, especially with a player like Liz Cambridge on the team who doesn't have the best character as we've seen over the last couple years. Now, if you guys don't know, this was a tough time for the LA Sparks. Derek Fisher was the GM, if I'm not mistaken. He had a lot of blunders. Like I already said, he signed Liz Cambridge. During this time, he did sign Chennedy Carter, which wasn't that good of a deal at the time considering what happened after the fact. And he sent former All-Star Erica Wheeler to the Atlanta Dream, which it just proved to be detrimental for the LA Sparks. They were bad after this. Now, of course, this doesn't excuse her actions or her behavior, but we know that when a team has no real culture, these sorts of things tend to occur. This starts to kind of happen. And though Carter was under contract through the 2023 season, the Sparks opted to release her for the offseason to rebuild that culture. Now, this was a turning point for Chennedy, a star in both high school and college, a player who has shown flashes and has made an immediate impact at every single level that she's been on, to now finding herself pretty much burnt out the league and overseas due to bad behavior and bad attitude. As one would assume, she did clear waivers, was not picked up, and at just 24 years of age, Chennedy found herself on the outside looking in. At this point, she then decided to go play back in Turkey, where she briefly played before her rookie year. Now, this time, in her second stint in Turkey, a do or die situation for her career, she made the absolute most of it. She averaged 24 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds, which led to her signing this season with the Chicago Sky. Now, if you guys go back and look at some highlights, which obviously I'm gonna show some on this video, but if y'all look at some of her Turkey highlights, crazy buckets. She was giving them work from the moment she stepped in Turkey. It was insane. Now, all of this comes full circle to today. Chennedy Carter with the Chicago Sky. Now, we can already say the year has started off very, very well for her. She has been a very good teammate, which all comes full circle, which leads us back to where a lot of us, well, let me not say us, a lot of you guys probably met Chennedy Carter, and that was after she pushed Caitlin Clark. And of course, with her history, it didn't take long for people to point out her prior behavior and attempting to label this incident at that same level and basically trying to paint her as something that she frankly isn't, as well as has grown from, if that makes sense. Now, in my opinion, as someone who watched this game live, as I said earlier in the video, Caitlin did elbow Chennedy shortly before the push. Of course, though, as the old adage goes, second offender always gets caught, and that's the case here like any other. So far, though, in her Prove It year, Chennedy has shown a change in both her maturity and leadership alongside Angel Reese, and the young Sky very likely found a cornerstone piece for their future to go at Cardoso Musa, Reese, and their continual developing squad. With her history, it might help the Chicago Sky to get a bargain on her. But I think she's going to continue to figure it out while showing that she's still one of the top players in this game. Now, it's funny to think about, after the Caitlin Clark incident, people were pulling up her stats from years prior and stuff like that. First of all, the stats that they were pulling up, it was from like a couple games where she didn't really play. But secondly, it very clearly showed how out of touch the new fan base is with the sport, because had they done a little bit deeper looking, they would have saw that Chennedy is legit and has been since her freshman year of college, since she was 17, 18 years old. I understand people largely made fun of her because she said pass making threes. Caitlin doesn't do much of anything else. So I do understand why they went to go look at those stats. I'm not gonna act like I don't get it. But while I disagree with what Chennedy said, I can say the commentators and the haters regarding Chennedy and her not even being close to Caitlin as a basketball player, it's very, very wrong, and it's pretty inaccurate, because she's a very good basketball player, especially on the offensive end. She might not be able to shoot like Caitlin, but I'd put it like this: if Caitlin is Steph, Kennedy's Kyrie. Not to say Chennedy can dribble like Kyrie, because I know how y'all get. Y'all get the point. Please get the point. Golly. Point is, Carter's a bucket. She talks her shit. She plays aggressive. All characteristics that we like in the men's game, by the way. Coming from a player who has the game to back it up as well. We love this from men's hoopers, so I don't understand why it becomes convoluted and the opposite when it's a WNBA player. Based on the few locker room interactions, the post-game interviews, and all the things that I've seen regarding Chennedy, this Chicago Sky team, and just her as a growing individual, it tells me that she's found a good team with a solid culture that she can fit into and continue her WNBA career. This Chicago Sky team has one thing that the other two teams that she played for didn't have, and that's a true culture to build around. Those other teams didn't have that. This team does, and it goes to show why Chennedy Carter is actually successful now. Fit matters the same way it does in the NBA, and that's all I got for you guys in this one. I think Chennedy will re-sign with the Chicago Sky, and I think she will rightfully be able to continue to show why she belongs in the WNBA. There's one thing that'll always prevail, and that's talent and hard work. Honestly, hard work beats talent when talent fails to beat hard work. That's all I got for you guys in this one. It's your boy TB with the greatest hoop stories and debates on the tube, and it is crazy that I remember that because it's been so long, but I'm out.